Couldn't have asked for better. Could not have asked for better. Is everyone up here now?
Let's see, we got it.
Is anybody missing?
All right, got everybody? Yeah. Hey again, Steve.
Yeah. Yep. Hello, Steve. Dr. Robinson. Off. I guess I'm.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this very special occasion as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Americans in Orbit. Before we get started this evening, we'd like you to welcome the Honor Guard of the 45th Space Wing and Patrick Air Force Base and Technical Sergeant Jennifer Fiora of the 920th Rescue Squadron for the singing of our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
We are here to celebrate with John, Glenn, and Scott Carpenter, truly American heroes. But we would be remiss if we did not also honor, as we sit here, Alan and Gus and Wally and Deke and Gordo and all of the men and women of the Mercury program. On those shoulders of giants was launched a golden age of exploration. There are some special guests I'd like to recognize in the audience. Siggy Northcutt, daughter of Dr. Kurt Debus. Where are you, Siggy? Norma Wendt, daughter of Gunter Wendt. Laura Shepard Churchley, daughter of Alan Shepard. Lowell Grissom, brother of Gus Grissom. Astronaut Dick Gordon. Where are you, Dick? You here? There you are. Okay. 45th Space Wing Commander General David Cotton. Don Pardue, representing Congresswoman Sandy Adams. Helen Franta, representing the State of Florida Representative Steve Crisafulli. Chuck Nelson, Brevard County Chairman. NASA's Spaceflight Awareness Program honorees who are here. And the more than 200 men and women who worked here at the Kennedy Space Center during the Mercury program. I'd also like to extend a warm thank you to NASA and Delaware North for hosting this event, and to United Launch Alliance for their generous sponsorship. Now, we've got a little video, if you look at the screens, and this video highlights some of the amazing accomplishments of the Mercury program, specifically the orbital flights, and features some very special guest appearances.
In the midst of the Cold War, here the Soviet Union and the United States poised to annihilate each other with nuclear weapons, and it was an extraordinary time.
Of course, we were all given orders, which were supposed to be secret, to come to Washington and to not discuss the reason for those orders with anyone, even our wives.
NASA finally got interested in sending somebody into space. It was such a new thing. It was all very, very secret at that time. We went through a long selection process, and which included physical and psychological and every measurement they knew how to make on the human body, I guess. So when we finally came down on, we were finally selected. We were very happy to be there and felt honored to be among the 7 to be selected.
Well, I realized that I'd been chosen to be part of the first team. That was the end-all, be-all for me.
The original 7 were, of course, figures that were revered. The engineers who were doing the designs, the launch crews who were doing the day in and day out work, and then the crew shimmying into those little tin cans called capsules that were taking us into the heavens.
The mission was planned to come back and land on the water. And so we did a lot of water training on it too, as to what would happen if you had a leak in the spacecraft after you once hit the water, what the impact would be, if you're underwater, could you get out? And training like that tried to train for every possible contingency.
When I got to fly the shuttle, I knew what to expect. I think when John flew his first flight, he didn't know what to expect. And that's a huge difference. When John first launched, he was on a brand new rocket, never been to orbit before. We didn't know how humans would react in zero-G. We didn't know whether they'd be able to eat. Some people said their eyes wouldn't focus. All kinds of crazy stories that John told me that they told him before he launched to expect. He didn't believe any of those, and most of them were not true, but we just didn't know back then.
The day that I finally went, that was the 3rd time I had actually suited up and been on top, been locked in and ready to go. But when you finally get in the thing and you're ready to go, you're very, very busy. People think you're in there contemplating great thoughts, and I think it's more likely you're in there, as I was, double-checking all the instrumentation and talking to the people on the ground crew to make sure that everything was okay for launch.
That countdown for the launch is something you have done time and time and time again, so it was, in a sense, just another day at the office. But this was real, and it caught everybody's attention.
Godspeed, John Glenn. 6, 5, 4, 3,
Godspeed, John Glenn. I was in the blockhouse when he was, and the last to speak to him before liftoff. Gus and Al had both done that, but they weren't riding on this big fuel tank that had the ability to give him more speed than what Al and Gus had had. They didn't have enough to coast all the way around the world. They just had enough to go up a little ways and fall back to earth.
People look at all this fire and smoke on the ground, they think you're under huge stress inside. You're not. The thrust is just barely greater than the weight of the spacecraft, so you lift off very gently. And the more the fuel burns out there, the lighter it becomes, and the thrust is still high. So the farther you go up here on this entry into space, the more G's you feel inside.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around. Oh, that view is tremendous. Roger, turn on started. Roger, capsule turning around, and I could see the booster during turnaround just a couple of 100 yards behind me. It was beautiful. Roger, 7. You have a go, at least 7 orbits. Roger, understand go for at least 7 orbits.
Everything worked perfectly, and then there was an indication that John's heat shield was loose, which meant that after the 3rd orbit and on the deorbit that he would burn up if it was.
Well, I certainly want to make it a two-way trip and come back, of course.
It's the first thing I actually remember in my whole life is sitting in front of our nice black and white TV on the floor, because I had to get real close because, you know, I was really excited about this, watching the John Glenn flight. And the thing I remember most about it is sitting there worrying about whether or not John Glenn was going to survive when that heat shield was, you know, getting loose.
During re-entry then, instead of jettisoning that retro pack here and getting it off so I had a clean heat shield for re-entry, we left that on so that the heat shield would be held in place until the aerodynamic force of re-entry would tend to hold the heat shield in place. Now that made for an interesting, well, the re-entry was going to be interesting anyway, but it was even more interesting because as I would glance occasionally out the little window, I could see chunks of that retro pack breaking up and coming back by the window.
My condition is good, but that was a real fireball, boy. I had great chunks of that retro pack breaking off all the way through. Rocking quite a bit. I may still have some of that pack on. I can't damp it either.
And I couldn't be absolutely certain then whether it was the heat shield breaking up or the retro pack. And obviously it was a retro pack or I wouldn't be here today. But anyway, it was that kind of re-entry was the second problem we had in addition to the control system failure.
If you listen to the tapes, it's pretty clear that he knows that there's something going on there, and it's not the normal procedure because he knew the procedures really well. He knew that retro pack should have been gone.
Coming out of the blackout period and saying, Houston, this is Friendship 7. And of course the nation went nuts. The world went nuts.
Main chute is on green. Chute is out in reef condition at 10,800 feet and beautiful chute. Chute looks good. On O2 emergency and the chute looks very good.
His odds of not surviving this was about 1 in 6. So it was an extremely high-risk, unknown effort that they were going into, having never done it before.
And it came time for aligning the capsule in the proper attitude for retrofire. There was under thrust of the rockets themselves, and the result of the intermittently failed horizon scanner meant that the rockets were pointed in the wrong direction. Each one of those failures made me fly a little bit too far, and it all added up to 250 miles. Had a lot of people frightened. I was not frightened by that because, contrary to their lack of knowledge about my location. I knew exactly where I was. I was back on the water where I wanted to be.
We did research. We learned the new things first. And those were, and with a little investment and educated citizenry, away we went. With became a leader in the world in just about a century and a quarter.
It was a total, resounding success. And it was a great, great honor and pleasure to be a part of such a marvelous and successful program.
I was just talking to Bob Cabana, Kennedy Space Center director, and I said, boy, Bob was saying, what a spectacular night this turned out to be. It really is. The weather's ideal. I hope I didn't jinx it. Bob Cabana is the 10th director of the Kennedy Space Center here. He manages a team of 9,000 civil servants and contract employees. Prior to his appointment to the Kennedy Space Center in October of 2008, he was a former Space Shuttle astronaut, served as director of NASA's Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. He's flown on 4 Space Shuttle missions, serving as the pilot of Discovery on STS-41 in October of 1990, the pilot of Discovery on STS-53 in December of 1992, the commander of Columbia on STS-65 in July 1994, and the commander of Endeavour on STS-88. That was the first space station assembly mission in December of 1998. Mr. Cabana also shares the distinction with Senator Glenn of serving as a colonel in the United States Marine Corps. Please welcome Kennedy Space Center Director Robert Cabana.
Thanks, John. You know, John was talking about my space flights, and I was thinking, yeah, it was really cool, you know, but boy, I'd give anything to go back again. And then I got thinking, I flew my last flight in 98. Well, Senator Glenn flew his last flight in 98. He was 77 then. I got a few good years left in me. I might get back to that space station yet. What a great evening. What a wonderful way to kick off 50 years of the Kennedy Space Center by kicking off a celebration of 50 years of Americans in orbit. And I can't tell you what a thrill it is, what an honor it is for me to share this stage with 2 of my boyhood heroes and a fellow Marine test pilot. You know, tonight's theme is on the shoulders of giants. And what these guys accomplished, what the Mercury program accomplished, we wouldn't have gotten to the moon, we wouldn't have done anything had it not been for you guys. And I hope that all the Mercury folks that are here for the past couple of days are having a great time celebrating. And I can't see you all out there, but I'd like a round of applause for all the folks that are here for the Mercury program. Now, I definitely want to thank Delaware North and all of my folks at KSC that helped put tonight together, but there was one person in particular, as far as this Mercury reunion goes, that was just tenacious in his ability to pull it together. Is Hugh Harris out there? Hugh, thank you. There he is. You know, it's really been a fun couple of days. We've had some great panel discussions, and it's really fun sharing stories. And we look back on the past 50 years and what we've accomplished here at KSC and at NASA and in the United States, and it's truly remarkable. It has been phenomenal what we have done. But as great as our last 50 years have been, I think our next 50 years are even going to be better. And we have a path forward here at KSC. We are making tremendous progress, enabling commercial space operations and preparing the way for a big rocket that's going to take us back to the moon, onto Mars, to Lagrange points, you name it. We are going to make it happen. And the reason I am so confident that we are going to be successful, and even more so in the next 50 years, is because of the people that work here. You Mercury guys, I promise you, the new engineers coming on board KSC today are every bit as motivated and talented, and they want us to succeed. And we do stand on your shoulders. We thank you for all that you've done. I hope that you really enjoy tonight, that everybody gets a lot out of it. But remember, We're not done yet. We got a long ways to go, and we're going to make it happen right here at the Kennedy Space Center. Thank you.
Bob actually provided me with a moment that I will carry with me forever. Last year when he took me inside Discovery over in the Vehicle Assembly Building, and I think we were in the Vehicle Assembly Building, wasn't it?
It was in the OPF.
In the OPF. It was in the OPF at the time. And he actually let me sit in the left seat. And that was special. That was special. I said to him, gee, this is really roomy in here. Sure. Florida's own Bill Nelson was elected to the U.S. Senate in November of 2000 after serving 6 years as a member of the Florida Cabinet. He currently serves as the Senate Commerce, Budget, Finance, Intelligence, and Aging Committees and is recognized the leading congressional expert on NASA. Get old reading all that. Elected to the U.S. Congress in 1978, he served 6 terms, representing Orlando and the Space Coast, and became an early advocate for a balanced federal budget. In January 1986, Bill spent 6 days orbiting Earth as a payload specialist aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia. That experience gave him a new perspective on the Earth's fragile environment and a greater appreciation of the importance of our nation's space exploration program. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Bill Nelson.
To John and to Scott, but we're really all here to recognize this team that made it all possible. And these 2 gentlemen are exactly that kind of person. They don't take the credit, they give the credit back, and that credit does belong to you all. And we're so glad that so many of the old pioneers could be here to celebrate this occasion. And indeed, you were pioneers. Those were rough days back here. Remember, that was before the days of mosquito control. And remember, a lot of palmettos out here on the Cape, a lot of rattlesnakes in those palmettos, and out in those canals that were newly dug out, a lot of alligators. And of course, there still are. Many of you know that we presented the Congressional Gold Medal to John and the Apollo 11 crew just last year. That medal has been awarded to a select few pioneers in aerospace, such as Goddard and the Wright brothers and Lindbergh. And at that ceremony in the Capitol Rotunda, and they had brought in chairs and filled up the entire rotunda of the U.S. Capitol, John Glenn was quick to point out the humble nature that he is, that the honor of the award was with all of the scientists and the engineers and the workers who make the dream of spaceflight possible. Thank goodness so many of you are here today. At KSC and other centers, you continue the legacy that began with Mercury and with the astronauts that we honor today. I remember when I was a young congressman on the floor of the House one day, the Speaker, Tip O'Neill, beckoned me over. And he wanted to tell me a story when he was a young congressman, that he was down at the White House of a young president, Kennedy, and he had never seen him so nervous. He said he was pacing like a cat on a hot tin roof, and he called over to some of the White House aides and said, "What's wrong with the president?" Well, he found out that we were just getting ready to launch Alan Shepard on that suborbital mission because the Soviets had surprised us and put up Gagarin as they had surprised us putting up Sputnik. And of course, what went on after that successful suborbital flight, and then the president had the vision to say, we're going to the moon and back in this decade. And that started this whole program that has led to extraordinary things. As a matter of fact, the Atlas V rocket, which we are now working on commercial rockets and spacecraft that will ferry cargo and eventually a crew back and forth to the International Space Station. And one of those rockets, the Atlas V, it's the descendant of the Atlas rocket that carried John into orbit. And it may very well be one of the next rockets that carry astronauts to the space station. It was a monumental achievement to complete the space station last year. Bob told you a little bit about that, and now that the crew members do not have to focus on the assembly of the ISS, they're doing now what we want to do. They are experimenting. They are improvising. They are exploring. The potential for innovation and progress is limitless. Work aboard the ISS has already led to enormous scientific breakthroughs. Better cancer treatment delivery systems have been developed. A candidate vaccine for salmonella now undergoing its final Food and Drug Administration trials. It has been created. And right behind the salmonella vaccine is a vaccine for MRSA, the bacteria that rages in hospitals and it's hard to control. Muscular dystrophy treatments and techniques for performing remote ultrasounds have also been discovered. And recently we took another great step forward, the alpha magnetic spectrometer, which was taken by the next to the last shuttle mission. It's now on board the station. And when they opened it up, it started receiving all of these subatomic particles, these cosmic rays that are flying through space, and analyzing them into unlocking the mysteries of subatomic particles, including dark matter. We keep sending explorers into space because we want a better understanding of the universe and our place in it. And like Bob Cabana, I'm very confident that a sense of mystery is going to keep people pushing for a robust space program. There's always more to know. And that's why so many of tonight's guests share a passion for inspiring and educating our next generation of explorers. Nearly a quarter of our nation's aerospace engineers are set to retire over the next 5 years. And it's absolutely essential that we motivate and educate a pipeline of engineers and scientists and mathematicians to take their place. And we have no greater tool for achieving that end than a motivating and an exciting and a robust space program. A space program that achieved orbit for the first time 50 years ago from a seaside launch pad at the Cape. And this program will go on. And as Bob Cabana said, we're just getting cranked up for this next 50 years because it is in our genes as a people. Our nature is that we are explorers and adventurers. And the dream, ladies and gentlemen, is alive.
Congressman Bill Posey represents Florida's 15th congressional district, which encompasses most of Brevard County, south of the city of Cocoa, Indian River County, most of Osceola County, and a small portion of northern Polk County. So it's pretty big. Posey was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2008 and is currently serving in his second term. In the House, Congressman Posey serves on the Financial Services Committee and its two subcommittees on capital markets and government-sponsored enterprises and oversight and investigations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bill Posey.
Thank you, John, and thank each and every one of you here today for participating in this wonderful event on this truly wonderful night to salute the awesome guest, our space legends. I was asked to take a few minutes to share how I believe the orbital flights impacted the Space Coast and the state. On February 20th, 1962, I was only in the 8th grade, so I can't really testify firsthand how it affected the whole state. But I can tell you a little bit about how it affected the Space Coast. First and foremost, obviously, the orbital flights were and are the reason we became known and are still known as the Space Coast. Back in the day, schools used to have fire drills before they launched. Purely coincidental, I'm sure, but it allowed the children to go out into schoolyards and we could witness history being made firsthand. When we were out there, the boys would all be anxious and enthusiastic about having our guys beat the Russians in the space race. The girls, they were a little bit more sensitive. Most of them were crying prior to all your launches, realizing the real and present dangers faced by our pioneers and their families. Back in the day, everything in the Space Coast revolved around the Cape. And just in case someone was a couch potato, lived under a rock, or for some other reason might not have known about all the exciting things that were taking place here, there was a popular comedy TV series in the 60s, some of you may remember it, I Dream of Jeannie. It may have been filmed in California, but everybody in the world knows it was set in Cocoa Beach in Cape Canaveral. How else did these flights impact the Space Coast, Brevard County? Well, from the mid-50s to the mid-60s, Brevard County was the fastest growing county in the United States of America, second to none. The highest per capita income in the United States of America, second to none. The lowest per capita age in the United States of America, second to none. A few other statistics I won't go into. It also had the highest number, I'm told, I couldn't prove this, per capita number of Corvettes in the nation, which were figuratively and literally led by our Corvette driving astronauts. Aircraft companies, later to be known as aerospace companies, all across the nation spent their most talented, their best men and women to the Cape to support the launch industry. And many others came in pursuit of the many economic opportunities that the launch programs provided. It turned the Space Coast into an incredibly diverse series of communities. Citizens of all backgrounds, from all places, all races, and walks of life, who worked hard and played well together, solidified by the common goal of universally, unequivocally, 100% supporting America's efforts to be first in space and supporting the men atop the rocket. From their very first introduction to the public, our space heroes, the giants we honor here tonight, as the record clearly shows, spoke eloquently about God, country, and family. They were the real deal. They truly had the right stuff. And everyone, I mean everyone, loved and respected them. They set the tone and good examples for the entire space community. their hard work, their courage, their patriotism, dedication, and many other fine defining qualities of them and those who supported and followed them led the way to the accomplishments and the almost infinite number of benefits which we take for granted today. Yes, they and many of you here and many of relatives of you here helped make the Space Coast, the state, and for that matter, the nation and the entire world a better and safer place. And frankly, at the end of the day, I don't think anything has ever impacted the Space Coast as positively and as much. God bless these men. May God bless each and every one of you here today. May God be with your colleagues who have gone on to glory, and may God continue to shine his light and bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Yeah, they drove the Corvettes, and I'm told the journalists who covered them were driving the Volkswagen Bugs or something, I think it was. I guess that's appropriate. Calvin Fowler was the Convair, later General Dynamics Corporation, person responsible for supervising the checkout and launch of the Mercury Atlas rockets that carried Scott Carpenter, Wally Schirra, and Gordon Cooper into orbit. Fowler's responsibility was to make sure that his launch team understood why failures occurred and to make sure that it wouldn't happen on the Mercury launch. He didn't want them to go up and come down before they were supposed to. Calvin continued working in the space program, including unmanned satellite launches, as base manager for GE in the Apollo program, and as a staff member to the McDonnell Douglas base manager in the shuttle program. In 1993, he retired and is now a college professor at Webster University's Space Coast campus on Merritt Island, Florida. Retired from Webster University and teaching in May of 2010. Calvin Fowler.
I can't see you, but many of you out there worked for me on the Mercury program on Pad 14. I'm up here representing you tonight, not me. You did the work. And let me just tell you a little bit about the development of the Atlas. I graduated from college in June of 1955, and my first job was at Convair. The letter offer said, "We just won the Atlas missile contract. I don't know what you will be doing, but it will be exciting." And you can see some of the excitement that we went through. Now, the weapon system we were developing, we were in a Cold War with Russia. You know, we were thinking they were developing missiles aimed at us, and we had to develop missiles to aim at them. And I got involved in that in addition to working down here. I got sent out to Cheyenne in 1960 to deploy Atlases, and in 16 months I was out there. We deployed 18 of them that the Air Force could put the warhead on them and aim them at Moscow. So I think we won that war because they never did shoot at us, because they knew we had enough to shoot back at them. Now, when I came back from there, then I got involved in the Mercury program after John's flight. And again, as I said, you know, you guys did the work for me. My job was just to make sure the conditions were so you could do your job, getting everything checked out according to the procedures that we had developed over the many years, everything that was done, every problem that came up, we got it approved, discussed, resolved, and no questions asked that when it came time to launch, you guys had it ready. And then I got the credit of going in and saying, T-minus 18 seconds and counting, engine start. And the astronauts went away. And all because of your work, not my work. You were the ones that did the checkout, and I was just representing you, you know, and I got to push the button for you. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. Now, after that, I went with GE because they had some management problems that they needed solving, didn't know how to solve. I solved the problems there. That was always a forte of mine, of solving management problems. I worked for them for a long time, eventually became base manager in the Apollo program. When that was over, just like at the end of Shuttle, you know, a lot of people were laid off. I couldn't replace all of my GE people. But Valley Forge thought enough of me to pull me up there because they had some problems they didn't know how to solve. I went up there and solved those problems. Finally, I got tired of the cold weather, and I moved back down here in the shuttle program. And then it said I became a college professor, and I am retired from that now, but I'm tired of doing this. I'm ready to go back teaching again because I can't get a job in the space program at my age. But I want to thank you for letting me represent you in the Mercury program. Thanks.
I don't know. There's some problems I think that we could use a problem solver. You might still be able to find some work for you. Steve Robinson has flown on 4 space shuttle missions and has also served as a backup crew member for the 4th crew of the International Space Station. He flew on STS-85 in 1997, STS-95 in 1998, STS-114 in 2005, and STS-130 in 2010. Dr. Robinson has logged over 1,156 hours and 19.8 million miles in space, including over 20 EVA hours, just 20 EVA hours. He also plays the most important thing, lead guitar in Max Q, the astronaut rock and roll band. And he's here as a special guest appearance to acknowledge the impact of John Glenn's 2nd flight.
Thank you all. It's an honor to be here. And it's great to be the youngest astronaut on the stage. That doesn't happen very often to me anymore. You know, this 50th anniversary thing is a big buzz in the astronaut office these days. And earlier this week, I was talking with some of my colleagues, and I said, you know, for John Glenn's first mission, I won 2nd prize in the San Francisco Chronicle Kids Art Contest by drawing a picture of John Glenn's rocket. And 36 years later, I was strapped into the good ship Space Shuttle Discovery on the pad right next to John Glenn being ready to launch. And one of my colleagues said, wow, what'd the guy who won first prize get? So here we are celebrating the first half century of Americans exploring space. And this could not be possible without doing just what this whole theme of tonight is called, standing on the shoulders of giants. The thousands upon thousands of people over the generations now who were the scientists, the engineers, the technicians, the support staff, but what they really were the dreamers and the true believers who were joined together at the heart to do something that the rest of humanity thought was probably impossible. It was very close to that. We astronauts, we're the representative ones. Just like Cal Fowler said, representation, we're standing up here, we're the most visible part, but not the most important part. We represent the peak of the pyramid of the nation's dreams and optimism and curiosity and restless enthusiasm to see what's over the next hill. Now, when Senator John Glenn, an American icon, was assigned to a space shuttle mission, it didn't really surprise us in the astronaut office too much because he was supposed to get 7 orbits that first time. He only got 3. So in what has to be a pretty much the best example of good politicking, I think he managed to get his last few orbits. But some people applauded the decision, some people criticized it. But what many people didn't realize was this space shuttle mission was one of NASA's most ambitious science missions ever attempted. And in a science mission, you have the commander of the mission, and then the person responsible for the science on the mission is called the payload commander. And that was my job on that mission, which was very exciting and a huge job. And then I found out that Senator Glenn was going to be on the crew. And then I found out that meant I was the guy that told Senator Glenn what to do. I was Senator Glenn's boss. The guy used to draw his rocket. This made me very nervous. Strapping into a rocket was nothing, but that made me nervous. So my commander and I had some good talks about that, and Senator Glenn finally showed up, and I sat down and I said, you know, this is a really busy mission, and frankly, it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to have to work like a dog just like the rest of us. How silly of me to think that I needed to tell a Marine fighter pilot to work hard. All right, so next thing you know, I say, now I can call him John after a while, and John, you got to learn how to work these laptop computers, because we've got 20 of them on board. We literally did, and you're going to have to be the boss of some of those. And he says, well, Steve, I usually let younger people operate the computers. I said, nope, you got to do that. And next thing you know, I'm getting calls from the people who train us how to do the computers. You know, we can't get this guy from stopping bugging us. Can you get... He knows how to do everything he needs to do, but he still wants more training. He wants to become more of an expert, and we're running out of time. So we found that happen in everything in training for SDS-95 on that mission. And we were very busy, and John was a very, very productive member of the crew, not only as part of the crew that stood in for the hands and eyes and minds of the scientists on the ground to do experiments, but also as an experiment himself. We did a tremendous amount of studying of the human body at that age, and I'm happy to say it held up really, really well. When we did emergency training, we were worried, you know, John's 77 years old. In emergency, you got to get out of the shuttle quickly, wearing a whole lot of equipment. It's heavy, it's awkward, it's confusing, tend to fall down, and so we developed a plan to take care of him if we had to. So here comes the first. I never told you this, did I? Here comes the first emergency training session, what we had, the simulation. And, you know, they start the clock, they sound the emergency, we start unstrapping, people start getting out, we start to put the plan together. Where's John? He's out, he's gone. And we realized he's had more emergency training in his life than all of us put together. Skunked again. So this is how it went for that mission. And so finally, we got up in orbit. The public affairs folks had told us at one time, hey, we're going to put a little camera kind of hidden in the cracks down to look at John Glenn's face while they launch. And so we said, okay, and we were getting used to cameras by then. And so we launched, and things went great. We had a great time. And we had forgotten about this camera because it was sort of hidden in a crack. Later, come to find out, when we looked at the tape and had to beam it back down to the ground for the hungry masses of media that couldn't wait to see John Glenn as he launched, the camera was a little misaligned. It was pointed right at me. What a disappointment. So many things happened during that mission. We were extremely busy. Things went very well. Most of them did, not everything, as is normal in space flight. But we had a wonderful time, and we learned a lot from each other. We bond together like no other in a space shuttle mission crew. I remember one day we were eating lunch, and John was eating his tortilla. It might have been a peanut butter and jelly tortilla. That's a favorite. Except he was upside down on the middeck. The rest of us were right side up, upside down. I said, John, why are you eating your lunch upside down? He said, because I can. Good point. And remember that computer thing. So one day he's typing on the computer. I said, boy, John, you really got good at those things. Yeah, typing an email. Hey, typing to Annie? No, to the president. I said, the president? You have the president's email address? He was typing an email to the president. Sure enough, the next morning out of the printer comes a message back from the president of the United States, who said that he had been talking to some people about Senator Glenn's flight and had asked a woman who was 90 years old what she thought. And she said, well, I think that's a fine thing for a young man like that to do. You know, the Mercury program changed America's image of itself. After that, people said, well, if we can fly in space, why then we can. Number of positive things. So the American psyche became became stronger and different because of the success of the Mercury program and the people that were in it. And after SDS-95, John Glenn, after having been a role model for kids in my generation, became a role model for my parents. What an amazing thing, and kind of sort of an amazing reverse evolution. People all around America said, senior status said, if John Glenn can do that at 77, why I can. And so this is the power of the space program and the people in it to make America see how great it really is and how great it could be even better. And I think the space program will continue doing that. Of the 332 people Americans who have orbited the Earth, 5 of whom are represented here on this stage today, every one of us has truly stood on the shoulders of giants, the people who kept dreaming, who kept believing in the impossible, and still are. So I just spoke on the phone a couple of days ago with the commander of the space station, Commander Dan Burbank, and his crew. 6 people on the space station right now, working harder than people even can imagine to work, continuing the dream, still standing on the shoulders of giants. We will continue that as long as giants are still around. So thank you, Giants of NASA, for the past, the present, and the future.
I remember covering that John's flight, and I remember that it was almost delayed because there was like a boat in the restricted area. I think you remember that. 6 days after John's flight, he addressed a joint session of Congress. And he said, quote, "As our knowledge of the universe in which we live increases, may God grant us the wisdom and guidance to use it wisely." Very eloquent. He also liked to poke fun at times at the risk when a journalist like myself would ask him, what about the risk? And he said, quote, "We used to joke about it in the past when people would say, 'What do you think on the launch pad?' And the standard answer was, 'How do you think you'd feel if you knew you were on top of 2 million parts built by the lowest bidder on a government contract?'" That's a direct quote. Scott Carpenter was the backup for John's flight, and Scott was in mission control. And Scott, of course, uttered those famous words, "Godspeed, John Glenn." And I asked Scott, I said, had you prepared that, thought about that ahead of time? He said, no. He says, I did not. I just knew that John, because he was going into orbit, was going to need a lot of speed. And 3 months later, of course, Scott also had his turn at flying. And, one other thing that I asked Scott, I said, "Scott, did you prefer outer space or inner space?" Because, the Aquanaut program, heavily involved in that. And he said that he really hadn't made up his mind which one. But he said, and I'm going to quote him here as well, he told me, the difference was glory. John Glenn, Scott Carpenter. I'd like to get the two of you to come up here, please. And we have over here a rocket that we want you to sign. I was told to take the capsule off because it might fall off. Wouldn't be a good thing. This Mercury Atlas model will be forevermore displayed at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. The artifact will be displayed in early space exploration until a permanent display is created in the future NASA Legacy Museum. Ladies and gentlemen, the first 2 Americans to orbit our planet Earth, Senator John Glenn and Scott Carpenter. Senator.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, very much. Thank you. With all these references to age tonight, I just want to put the lie to one thing, and that is, it is not true that NASA would not let me go out on a spacewalk because they were afraid at my age I might wander off someplace. But it is true, I do get a lot of emails joking about age, and I think you might get a kick out of a couple of them there. They have no relation to anything except I just think they're funny. But one of them is about the elderly gentleman who started downtown, and about 10 minutes later, his wife calls him on the car phone and says, "Oh, Fred, please be careful. I just saw on TV where there's a car driving the wrong way on the freeway." And he says, "Mary, there's not one, there are hundreds of them." And another one was the three old astronauts are walking out across the ramp. And you know, as you get older, some of your faculties do change, and not always for the better. And so the three elderly astronauts are walking out across the ramp, and the first one says, "It's windy." And the second one looks at him and says, "No, it's Thursday." And the third one said, "Oh, me too. Let's go get a beer." That's all the ones I remember at the moment here. Has no relationship to anything except I just wanted to share that with you. Anyway, well, thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you all for on the platform here for your very kind words and all the expressions of future of the expressions of hope for future of the space program. Bill Nelson named a number of things we already have learned, and I think that's only the beginning. And every one of those things that he mentioned are things that they don't just happen for somebody in benefit of somebody in space. It's benefit of people right here on Earth. Benefit of you, your kids, your grandkids. And that to me is the important part. I think the space program has always meant two kinds of exploration to me. And number one is just going new places, low Earth orbit, moon, beyond, sometime to Mars, so on. And that's important. That's the exploration. That's the macro exploration. But equally important are those things that Bill talked about that are what we learn to do as we travel to new places. We use that ability then to research more and more different things we never contemplated to begin with. And that's the micro exploration, the laboratory type exploration that is evident in the International Space Station. When I was in the Senate the last few years I was there, I floor managed the bill, even though I was not on the committee, but they asked me to floor manage the bill on the station when it came through the Senate for approval and for its appropriation. And I did that because I thought it had more potential for benefit for people right here on Earth because of the research we could do there in this most unique laboratory ever put up than any other thing I'd ever dealt with. And that's in the micro exploration area. And we spent over $100 billion putting that up there. Very expensive, but it has the greatest potential for good also. And I think it's too bad, and I really regret we won't get into all the politics of this, but I think it's too bad that in a previous administration the decision was made to end the shuttle, so now we have to go someplace else to even get up to our station to do that kind of research. And I regret that is the way things have developed. But Bob and his people and all the other people working on the program, many of you here tonight who are working here too, are working very hard to get the next generation of spacecraft and boosters going so we can continue that exploration. Not just out to see how far we can keep somebody alive in a can and bring them back again, but the ability to open new areas where we can do basic fundamental research. And people say, well, what good is research always? Well, the things like Bill mentioned, as well as the I think every bit of progress made by human beings has been made because somebody was curious about the unknown. Somebody was curious about if we do things a little differently, or we learn something new, or if we combine these elements, maybe we can do this or that or something else, and it works. And if there's one thing we have learned through the history of our country, it's that money spent on basic research has a way of paying back in the future beyond anything we ever see at the outset. And I think that's just going to be as true in the future as it's been in the past. Look how this nation developed. In 125 years, just a blink in the eye of history, this nation went from the Revolutionary War to about 1900 and became a leader of nations after being a nothing nation, a couple of million people along the eastern seaboard. And we took over leadership of the world because of two things: basic education for all of our people and basic research. And those are the two things that we better excel in, or 50 or 75 years from now, we may not be the world's leader. And I think it has that kind of importance to it in what you're doing right here, and in the support for the not only the station, but for space research in general, that will open up new fields in which we can do not only macro but micro research that benefits everyone. John mentioned the clothes that I used for the congressional speech way back in '62, and I think that is a very good. I like that quote, and I used it the other day at the gold medal ceremony in Washington also, to close those remarks also, because I think we're involved with something very, very big that can benefit all of humanity. You do indeed, when you're up there, have a different view of your world in which you live when you come back and you've looked down and seen whole nations at a glance. And I was never privileged to be on a lunar flight, as Dick Gordon, who's here someplace tonight, was, and where coming back they look at the blue marble back here. And we didn't go that far out, of course, on the flights that I was on. But you still look down and you see whole big swaths of the earth beyond anything that human beings have been able to see before, and it does give you a different perspective. And I might say that the more we share this with other people and work together, the more we perhaps are working toward peace in the world. Just a little side note on that one here, and then I'm going on too long here already. But just a little side note on that. Before that first orbital flight, I was looking at the maps one day, and the orbital track was on there, and I thought, this is going to go over in southwest Africa. It's going to go over the edge of the Namibia and the Kalahari Desert. Now, there are Aborigines still out in that area that we don't know much about. And up across the center of Australia, the Aborigines there in the outback are still there. And up across Papua New Guinea on one of the orbits. And across there, all those three areas where there are three areas that still have Aborigines left. And I was thinking, if I had to make an emergency re-entry and came down in one of those areas, well, the people on the ground there might hear a sonic boom, kerboom, they look up, here comes a little black dot, comes down, thing billows out of it. It comes down in the clearing here and sits down, and the hatch blows off the side, and out steps this thing in a silver suit. You're going to be one of two or three things. You're going to be God, chief, or dead. Pretty quick. So you better have some means of communicating. And so I wrote out a little message. Me, big friend, take me to your leader, all the things that you would think about. And had this very serious message translated into some of the more primitive languages of the world that were most likely to be used in those particular areas, and had them translated into phonetic language that I could use to try to get this message across, if in the unlikely event I had to come down in one of these areas. And what I'm building up to is this. In those more primitive languages of the world, the word for stranger and the word for enemy were the same word. In other words, if you don't know somebody, you're much more likely to consider them an enemy and want to fight them and be against them, and you're automatically against them because you don't know them. And what have we done in the space program? We have 16 nations working together, the biggest cooperative international program ever put together any time in the International Space Station. And future plans are to work with other nations in this, and so it's a force for good in that area too, in addition just to the pure scientific information that we have. Thank you all for being here tonight, and for the support that all of you give, and for the group that we met with before, the pioneers. I must say, in the group that many of you came over here tonight after we had met earlier with some of the people who were workers on the flight, on Mercury flights back in those early days. And there are a lot more bald heads and gray heads in that group than others, but those are the people who did lay the foundation for what goes on in all these other areas. And so we may be up on the point of that thing and get a lot of the attention, and we had ticker tape parades and all that sort of thing, but the people that made it work, that are doing the research that's so important for this country and for the world and for how we get along with everybody, you're the ones who deserve the accolade, so give yourselves a great big ovation.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Carpenter.
That is the first time I have ever stood at a podium and heard applause that I didn't feel I should quiet. You earned it. I also have been blindsided tonight. I didn't know I was going to have to follow in the footsteps of so many stand-up comics. I had a lot of things to say, especially to this group here gathered, who are pioneers and plank owners and contributors for half a century to what we did here. We are so deeply indebted to you for your selfless 50 years of hard work to get the monumental events off the ground that we celebrate here tonight. There are some monuments left standing here, some of them showing the effects of age, but they are still monuments, even though they haven't lasted as well as some of the people who were part of here. But the point is, even though the monuments have been degraded by age, the monumental efforts that we celebrate here have not changed, and they will never change. They are the genesis of a very important national program that must continue and will continue. And, you know, I often think, when I think of past progress, of saying to people who love this effort, we ain't seen nothing yet. I offer this in support of that belief. When I was in the second grade, we read a cartoon strip called Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. I, as a young boy at that time, believed firmly that what Buck Rogers did in 1930 would actually come to pass, but it would be 500 years. That into the 25th century before that happened, lo and behold, we were doing in 1960 what we read about in 1930 that would take 500 years. It took 30. I refer, that shows incredible progress in a very short period, beyond anything we could imagine. I mention here an article in the New York Times last Tuesday about John Glenn. It gave a great story about his marvelous accomplishments, his growth from a young boy to a national hero, and it quoted Tom Wolfe, the well-known author of The Right Stuff. Tom said, "John Glenn is the last of this nation's great heroes. New York City will never see again a parade for a man of such heroic proportions, and at the same time see the policeman weeping on the corner out of respect and pride for what the nation and this man has accomplished." That's a true example of praise for the man, and I hate to disagree with Tom Wolfe, but I do believe he missed one thing, and that is the progress of technology, and suggests that maybe one day before too long, the great hero John Glenn himself may be replaced by another national hero who represents the command of a Mars crew returned safely. That's what we have to look forward to. So, John, thank you for your heroic efforts, and all of you for your heroic efforts. But we stand here waiting to be outdone. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause, please, for Senator John Glenn and Scott Carpenter. Before you leave here tonight, I'd like all of you to just look up at the night sky for a moment, and we did get lucky, no rain, and think of what has been built on the shoulders of the giants. There's a glistening International Space Station the size of a football field orbiting above us. There's a telescope named Kepler that seemingly every day is finding new planets, Earth-sized and perhaps Earth-like. There's a rover named Curiosity that, as we sit here, is making its way to Mars to look for the building blocks of life on another planet. The Voyager spacecraft are in an area called the heliosheath, at the very edge of our solar system, about to leave the solar system after traveling 9 billion miles. We can perhaps here just use those words of the poet Robert Frost and say, "And miles to go before I sleep." Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.